So sorry, everybody. Okay, did that work? Okay, and thank you all for clicking whatever buttons Zoom asks you to click. And I am so glad to pass it over to the wonderful Mariella, and thank you so much for leading us in our sit today. Over to you, friend.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you everyone again for being here. As Brian said, if you wish to camera on or turn it off, allow yourself to find a position that is comfortable, relaxed, alert. But if you need to, you know, just really lay down, really take care of yourself, whatever you need to do. And as Brian said today, the practice is going to be a little shorter. We'll practice for about 15 minutes. And I'm going to ring the bell at the beginning and at the end of practice. If you want to close your eyes or simply lowering the gaze. And if you want to start by taking a couple of deeper breaths, allow yourself to do that. Taking a deeper inhale through the nose and a deep exhale. Inviting ease and relaxation into the body. And dropping down the shoulders, softening the jaw, softening the muscles around the face and the body. And just bringing all of your attention to this moment. Using your senses to orient yourself in the space you're in. And when your eyes are closed, you can do that by noticing sounds, noticing smells, feeling the temperature of the space you're in. And moving your awareness to sensations in the body. Noticing the different points of contact of the body with the chair, the cushion, the sofa, whatever object you are sitting or laying down on. Seeing sensations in the back. The sit bones area. Notice sensations in the legs, the soles of the feet. Feeling the contact of the feet with the ground Taking a moment to acknowledge the earth underneath you, holding you and holding us all in different parts of the planet. For the next few moments, just simply being here, nowhere to go, nothing to do, just being here, noticing what is it like to be human right now. What does it feel like to inhabit this human body in this moment? Inviting a sense of curiosity, a kind of attention that is kind, that is tender, and non-judgmental. Holding in a lover and tender awareness, what you notice, what's present right now in the body, sensations, thoughts, emotions. See if you can also notice the breath in the body. That's another thing happening right now. And for the next few moments, just bringing your awareness to the breath. Just resting in the awareness of the body breathing. If for any reason the breath doesn't feel like a safe place to rest the attention right now, you can find a different anchor by bringing attention to the soles of the feet or anchoring your attention in another part of the body. But if breath feels safe, just rest in the awareness there. See if you can feel and notice the aliveness of this moment with each breath. The body continues to breathe, expanding now your attention to other sensations in the body. Opening your awareness to phenomena arising and passing by. You may notice sensations that are pleasant. There may also be sensations that are unpleasant, and some that are neither pleasant or unpleasant. And we are welcoming them all in this space. It's all welcome. There's nothing wrong with any of them. If you look closely, you may notice that these sensations change. It's impermanent in nature. Notice phenomenon arising and passing by. We are cultivating being with what arises with an attention, with a type of awareness that is loving, that is tender, that is gentle. If you wish, you can place one or two hands in the chest or the heart space as a way of offering support to yourself in this moment. Taking a moment to check in with the heart, noticing what's present there. And as your attention is in the heart space, maybe checking with yourself and asking yourself, what do I need to hear right now that will feel supportive? What is the word or phrase that if you were to hear it, would offer support in this moment? And I'd like to invite you to offer that word or phrase to yourself It's a way of offering support to you in this moment. That could be something like, I love you. We're going to be okay. Yeah, this is difficult. Whatever that is, offer that to you. And notice if that offers makes anything happen in the body. Perhaps maybe brings ease, softness. And know that offering support to yourself in this way is available to you whenever you want to access it. And taking a couple of deeper breaths once again. And as we approach the end of this practice, I'd like to invite you to end by bringing your attention towards gratitude. I'd like to invite you to find something that you could be grateful for in this moment. A part of the body, a person, an object, an event, a situation, a pet. Whatever that is, and notice how gratitude is experienced in the body. And also take a moment and find gratitude for yourself for having made the time to be here with you in this way. In a world that is full of distractions, making time to be with oneself. This is starting to feel to me like a heroic act. I invite you to honor that. And after I ring the bell, I'd like to invite you to see if you can make the rest of your day a continuation of your practice, so the practice doesn't stop here. The rest of your day becomes a continuation of your practice, where you continue bringing a kind of awareness that is curious, that is kind, that is non-judgmental. Thank you all for your practice. And now pass it on to Brian, to Trudy for our wonderful talk. Thank you all for practicing together and for being here.
Oh, thanks so much, Mariella, for leading us in that sit. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for being here. I'm so glad that we are here. And for those that joined mid-sit, we are still the Inside LA Mindfulness and Deep Suffering Practice Group. We're a practice group. We're an affinity group. And so glad that Trudy is here for the fourth year in a row to give the final, one of the final. This is next week, it'll be Marielle and myself having a conversation about the H.O.P.E group over the last 3.5 years. But today. Trudy, thank you so much for being here. For those that know Trudy or don't know Trudy, well, let me give you a 10-second little blurb about Trudy. Trudy is yeah, very short. Trudy is the founder of Inside LA. She is a psychotherapist with a lot of experience all over the world. She is the voice of the Trudy the Love Barbarian on the Netflix show Midnight Gospel. And Trudy is a very friendly teacher, the kind of teacher where she is there to help. She is there to help us feel heard. And also, she's there for hugs. And I'm so glad that, Trudy, you're the kind of teacher where it's okay to come up and ask for a hug sometimes, because I think we all need a hug from time to time. So over to Trudy. Thank you so much, Trudy, for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for your warm welcome. And yeah, thank you, Tanya, for coming up and asking for that hug because, you know, I'm not supposed to just like touch people without invitation. So that was really nice to get that invitation. It's also really just it's actually really fun for me to see Yemo Yaoshin. I guess you're divine now, Yemo Yaoshin. I knew you as that, and Joe from the other group, and Sherry from decades ago. It's really a joy. Whenever I see anybody, I think of it as my former incarnation. When I lived in Cambridge, I had a whole different life, a whole different family, a whole different, I mean, everything was, yeah, it was like another incarnation. So it's just a great joy to see people from that time. So thank you for being here, Sherry. And I hope your time there is deeply, deeply healing. So so this morning I just want to share with you some of my own thoughts and feelings, but you know, in the context of practicing mindfulness and practicing self-compassion, practicing Dharma. And I, when Brian asked me for a title, I thought of this quote from Albert Camus, who was a French existentialist writer of the last century, and I have a soft spot in my heart for those writers because when I was 15, I was actually living on my own in France, and I read, I was looking for guidance, and so I was reading all these existentialists because they were talking about deep stuff like why are we alive and what does life mean, and so I was very drawn to their writing. And he said, this is from a letter that he wrote. Actually, he said, in the midst of hate, I found, oh, and also he was French Algerian, which the slang they say in French, pied noir, which means that he was very much, you know, there was a lot of war really for Algeria's independence, including when I lived there. My dear, in the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there were within me, and there were smiles. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me some calm. I realized, he says invincible, but I didn't read invincible smile or invincible calm because I don't experience my calm or my smile that way. There are times when it feels very, whatever the opposite of invincible is, it feels very vincible. You know, it feels very fragile, I would say. I realized, this is the one that I really love. I realized through it all that in the midst of summer, excuse me, this is my ADHD. I also am neurodivergent in that way. And if I don't write down a story, I'll tell, or a joke, I can't tell joke. You know, I'll tell the end before the beginning. My brain won't sequence things. This is a famous quote. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy, he says. For it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me, there's something stronger, something better pushing back. And it felt like a great quote for this group, because all of you who are here, whatever frightening, terrifying, heartbreaking, or just depressing circumstances or feelings you find yourself dealing with and maybe overwhelmed by, there is something pushing back, and that's why you're here. You wouldn't be here. You know, you're coming to the group, you're practicing mindfulness, your courage to do this practice, which is not easy to do. You know, people used to ask me, how come all these people come to beginner classes and then they don't continue? I was like, it's easy. They hear about mindfulness, think, oh, this is a great thing. I'm going to go do mindfulness. And then they discover it's about being present with everything. It's not going to make it go away. It's not a magic bullet. You know, it's about being with the difficult feelings, being with the grief, being with the sorrow, being with the despair, as well as, of course, the joy and love and smiles of life. But we don't usually have trouble being with those. So I really just want to respect, and I always feel honored to come to this group because I feel like everybody in this group is here for this reason, to learn how to be present with the worst things that can happen in our lives, and either to us personally, to those we love, or to the world. How to be present with that and keep on keeping on. And here we are. So yeah, thank you so much for that. And I guess I'd like to start with a story that I've told. I can tell it more freely now since my brother passed away, which is a terrible thing in the way that it happened and everything. But my brother, Jonathan, had a severe mental illness himself, and he was living at one point. This happened, I think, in, trying to remember, I don't know, maybe maybe 1978, 79, somewhere around there, before some of you were born, certainly before Matt was born, and certainly before several of others of you were born. And my meditation teacher at that time was a Japanese Zen monk named Kobun Chino Otagawa. And I loved Kobun very, very much. And he was coming to Cambridge. It was so exciting. I'd been sitting with him for about 3 years, and he had heard a lot about my brother because just for family, I was the only one around my brother. My parents lived overseas, so I was very close to him and involved in his life in a lot of ways at that time. And Coben came to Cambridge, and he said it was his idea. That's what was so touching about it. He said, let's go visit your brother. And my brother was living in a halfway house. He had been in the hospital, and he was out, but he was in I don't know if you still say halfway house, but it was a place where you could get some support while you're transitioning from being in care to being out on your own, and very affordable besides. And so we went to visit him, and it was this, a little bit shabby triple decker in Cambridge, but so many of the houses in New England are triple deckers. And we went up the stairs to his room, and in his room was one little room, and I'm the big sister, right? There was an ashtray overflowing with cigarette butts. In other words, he hadn't really cleaned up for this special visit from this special teacher that he was really excited about. And I have to say, I felt this mix of, oh God, why didn't you clean your room, to incredible admiration. Like, I would never be able to present myself exactly the way I am. I would have to clean up. And he did not feel the need to clean up. And that was just a lot of who my brother was. I really, really respected him for that. So we had a little visit, and Coben looked all around. And then he pulled he had this long, monk sleeve where you could keep stuff. It was sort of like the monk's version of a man purse or a man bag. And so I guess you don't say man purse, but anyway, he reached into the sleeve, and he had this rice paper, And then he reached in and he had an ink blot, and then inkstone, and then he reached in and he had a brush, and he asked my brother for some water, and he brushed the water with the brush against the inkstone, and he made some black ink. And then there was a little table, like a desk, in the room, and he spread out the rice paper, and with an incredible Zen calligraphy flourish, he wrote this beautiful letters in Japanese calligraphy, and he on the scroll, and then he handed the scroll to my brother, who was very, very, very touched and pleased, but we kind of wanted to know what it said, right? And so we said, well, what could you translate it? And the translation he gave was, life blooms in the midst of suffering. And it was very beautiful, because my brother was very obviously somebody who has suffered greatly at that time. And there he was, alive, which was a miracle in and of itself, alive. And I do want to say that my brother had some really happy years toward the end of his life before he died. But that saying, that calligraphy that Goodman wrote for him, became a kind of koan, or life. It became a kind of guide for me at times of really, really intense suffering. And this is a time of intense suffering. Not for personal reasons, thank God. I'm okay right now, and my family's okay, and we've survived a lot, just as all of you have, but we're okay right now. But really for the world. I'm Jewish, and since October 7th, it's just been a nonstop nightmare. And I'm not going to talk politically, except to say that as a mom, as a grandmother, it's unbearable to witness the suffering of that. And I've been having trouble sleeping too, because there's a forgotten war that nobody talks about. And I'm just going to mention it because this is a reason for my deep sorrow. And that is in Sudan. I have friends, Darfuri friends, in Eastern Chad, in the refugee camps where I went to teach. And the idea that after 20 years of living in these open prison camps, that they would have to suffer another, it's another genocide all over again. And when I say genocide, I mean people being killed because they're darker than other people. That's why they're being killed in Sudan. That's the reason. So I am really, really sad these days, and it feels so weird. Like I remember when I was really depressed, I would be angry when there was a sunny day. And by the way, I just want to say, Marty, I'm not forgetting about Ukraine, and watching what's happening and not sending what Ukraine needs. I mean, it's just, there's a lot going on in the world that is really hard to bear right now. And that of course maps onto whatever is difficult for us. But when you're feeling vulnerable, of course, what's going on in the world just piles on and becomes a reason for despair. And that's why we're here. Because, as a human being, we're all, mindfulness in some ways, this is why people didn't keep practicing some of them, because the hardest mirror to face in this lifetime is ourselves. And, as an open-hearted human, you are going to, we are going to experience the full range, right? All of the emotions, anger, panic, irritation, tantrum, heartbreak, all of it. I experience all of these things. I talk about them. I am not a failed teacher because I talk about these things. I feel like we are all vulnerable, and to share our vulnerability is how we get close to each other. And I feel like, okay, if I can experience these things and talk to you about it, whether it's personal or global or the earth, whatever it is, I can say, I think that I feel like a stronger teacher to be able to do that, actually. And I feel like it's it feels like too much, as I know it feels for many of you right now. It feels like too much, unbearable. But how do we bear the unbearable? You know, how do we bear it? I know I can handle it. Every time I get hard on myself, I just know I'm not trusting myself, and I can handle it. And you can handle it too by being together like this in community. You know, when you're young, you think, oh, I'm going to be great and I'll be loved for being great in some way or another, looking great, or I don't know, doing something that I feel great about. But that's not true. It's actually through vulnerability. It's through our willingness to be vulnerable that we become intimate with other people. And to be able to acknowledge and admit to your vulnerability the way you all have here, to me, that is just some of the most powerful stuff. And when people reach for community, for Sangha, I think it was Heather who was, no, it was maybe Karen. I can't tell because some cameras are off. But one of you was talking about going to a support group and people offering lots of advice, which is just so unhelpful, actually. I mean, for my poor daughter, I'm sure I do it all the time. My sister says I do it all the time. With my family, we're a little different with our families. I feel like some of our, I don't know, habits maybe that we can overcome in some contexts catch us up in other contexts. That's how I would put it. But we call it Sangha, we can call it companionship, we can call it community. Maybe you're walking with a suffering person who has come into your life. Maybe that suffering person is you. Like Tanya was saying, right now it's her. And when you don't reject yourself, when you don't reject that other person, we learn, actually. And I think we humans, we're wired to want to learn. And the suffering person or the suffering in our own hearts inevitably teaches us a new way of being, because it has to. And this can only come in relationship with others, in community, in groups. And if we are willing to accept learning from each other. I remember a great meditation teacher of the last century would always say, get in small groups and share your confusion. I have talked about this on Sundays. I was like, what, why? Why would I spend my time listening to other confused people who are just as confused as I am, right? But when we explain what has happened to us, when we explain how we feel to each other, it's completely different. And the way you feel is different from the way I feel. And true for every one of us here. And yet, by learning a little bit, and I so appreciated that you did those introductions, as brief as they were at the beginning, Brian, because just for a split second, I immerse myself in your world, each one of you. Just, and then you can get into my world, and then we share something that's really very deep together, and that is an antidote to despair. It really is an antidote to despair. And I think everybody is under stress who is here. I mean, it's just a hard time for a lot of people in the world, but particularly if you've chosen to be here and being in communion with each other. This is beautiful, actually. It's beautiful. I was so uplifted and encouraged to know that this group is going to continue in a different setting. Really, really, really happy about that. Just take a moment. I have a lot to share with you, and I want to. I want to read you a poem that also means a lot to me when I'm not sleeping well. I posted it on my Instagram, which is, by the way, Trudy_Goodman. The reason I'm on social media are mixed, actually, and it's a mixed experience to be on social media. But if you're on social media, you need to have followers So the algorithms will show you stuff. I mean, it's just, anyway. So Trudy_Goodman. And the poem is called The Sleepless Ones. And it's by a poet named Lawrence Turnauer. And what's really interesting is I kept looking for more poems from this poet because I love this one. It touched my heart. I could not find any other poems. He must have written other poems, but anyway, if any of you find them, let me know. Okay, it's called The Sleepless Ones. What if all the people who could not sleep at 2 or 3 or 4 in the morning left their houses and went to the parks? What if I would say, and went to the water's edge? What if hundreds, thousands, millions went in their solitude like a stream and each told their story? What if there were old people, fearful if they slept, they would die, and young women unable to conceive, and husbands having affairs, and children fearful of failing, and fathers worried about paying the bills, men having business troubles, and unlucky in love, those who were in physical pain, and those who were guilty? What if they all left their houses and like a stream, like a stream, and the moon illuminated their way, and they came each one to tell their stories? Would these be the more, and I ask of this group, would these be the more troubled of humanity? Or would these be the more passionate of this world? Or those who need to create, to live? Or the lonely ones? And I ask you, if they all came to the parks at night and told their stories, would the sun on rising be more radiant? And again, I ask you, would they embrace? I do sometimes wish that there was some little, I don't know, alert we could send out without waking each other up. You know, when it's like 2 a.m. and I could say, hey, let's meet down at the beach, come down, let's just sit and listen to the waves, because the waves represent, right, the waves of experience that ebb and flow. And sometimes they're huge and dramatic, and sometimes, well, they're never really little in the Pacific, but they vary, and the ocean varies, and we vary, and yeah. So, how much time do I have, Brian? Should we open up for other people?
Yeah, maybe because, and by the way, Trudy, are you okay? So the last few weeks we've been going until 11:45 just because there's been lots of questions and reflections. Are you okay going until 11:45 today, or do you want to stop at 11:30?
I might need to stop at 11:40.
40.
Like, I have to
Fantastic.
go somewhere and I might need that extra 5 minutes, but let's stay an extra 10 minutes, and I just have a couple more things I want to share.
Fantastic.
Okay, great. Just give me a moment. Looking for something I wanted to share with you. La 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 la. Okay, there it is. There it is. In talking about how difficult everything is and the wars, and I mentioned Gaza and Israel, and I mentioned the civil war in Sudan and the genocide of the Darfuri people once again, and Ukraine, but I could also mention the Democratic Republic, the DRC, Congo. I could also mention Myanmar. I could also mention, I could list them. And then you start to feel like, oh my God, what is this world and what's happening? And we have climate change. And it can, like I said, it can just sort of pile on. And at those times, I have to remind myself, there are actually more countries at peace in the world than there are at war. There are actually, you know, countless numbers of small towns and communities where people are helping each other, where people are good to each other and care, you know. There are so many places in the world where human goodness, our hearts are force for the good, as well as all these other painful things. And I just remind myself of this, and also the fact that science and technology have given us, along with addiction to our devices, science and technology have given us the possibility to answer so many of the challenges in the world. And actually, this is the first time in the history of humanity that humanity has had to make collective decisions about the way forward. And just that is amazing. Anyway, there are many things that are amazing that I need to remind myself of to stay balanced and not succumb to, not succumb to some kind of despair, and also being lost, being confused, grieving, being in despair. These are experiences that are about being human. And maybe some people don't want to admit it, but I believe everybody has had these moments, and that they're not totally without value, that there is something to be learned even when you don't feel like learning. I remember at one of the most intense grieving times of my life, a teacher said to me, "Oh, but this will make you so much more compassionate." Honestly, I wanted to say, read between the lines, because I didn't need to be more compassionate. I was already compassionate. Now, in fact, they were right, actually. I don't want to admit it, but they were, because you can be compassionate to a point. I was at a one-woman play about Pearl Buck, who had, oh my God, so many. She lived in China. She had so many challenges, a daughter, anyway, so many things. And the woman who was playing Pearl Buck, at one point, she sort of got out of role and sat on the edge of the stage. It was a small theater, and she was kind of swinging her legs, and she said, there are two kinds of people in this world. Oh, this makes me cry again. People who have experienced really deep suffering, and people whose lives just have not brought that experience to them of really deep suffering. And I remember when she said it, I just burst into tears, because there is something so isolating about being in deep, deep suffering. And like I said, you can get angry because it's sunny out, or you just feel like, wait a minute, the whole world should be cloudy and it should be pouring rain. That's why we all love Eeyore, right? I don't know you personally, Eeyore, but I certainly love that you identify fearlessly with Eeyore and have that picture there. So I'm grateful to you for not skipping over the pain in your hearts, even when it's sad and scary. I really respect you for that deeply, 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 deeply. And trust me, whatever this time is like for you, it is not wasted. That's all I can say. I'm not going to tell you that it gets better. I'm not going to tell you anything except trust that it is not wasted. There's a reason why John of the Cross wrote about the dark night of the soul. It's not wasted. It's part of who we are. So that's really most of what I wanted to share with you today. I have I read you more poems and this and that, but I'd actually like to hear from you. Thank you.